To be liberally educated means to have some significant appreciation of the great intellectual achievements of mankind.
The purpose of solid liberal arts education is to create fully formed human beings.
It means to be enriched, to be deepened, even to be ennobled intellectually and ideally morally by one's engagement with the best that has been thought and said.
This is an extraordinary prospect that we have here, where we want to understand the world in which we find ourselves, the people with whom we find ourselves, the possible purpose implicit or derived in any of this. That's a huge gift that only conscious matter has.
It's good to have a liberal education regardless of what you do with the rest of your life. Liberal education has to be understood as an end in itself.
It is incumbent on all of us to defend liberal arts ideals. And the Merrill Award, I think, is important because it honors people who do that.
So my father came from immigrant parents, grew up very modest means in New York City, and with a great liberal arts education, he was able to parlay his life into a journalist, being a successful businessman, being a diplomat that served around the world. It was because of his education that he felt he was able to do all of those things.
Jerry Martin, the founding president of the American Council of Trustees, and I would go out and have lunch with Phil. And it was always an exercise in excitement. With Phil, one never quite knew what the question would be, what the next bullet in the vest would be, but he was the personification of what a good, rich liberal arts education could produce.
I have great memories of my father talking about ACTA. Most of those memories are of him talking about Ann Neal. What really sets apart any organization is a strong, fiery leader who believes wholeheartedly in its mission and has that in spades.
Looking back at the files, I can find correspondence from Phil almost from the beginning. He was one of the first to sign up for the committee to support Shakespeare. He was one of the first to advocate strongly that we had to stay on target for creating and establishing a strong core curriculum.
That a hardcore businessman would have insisted on the promotion of the liberal arts as a core function for this society puts him squarely in my home. I would have loved to have known him.
You know, my father was hesitant to have this award named after him. It just wasn't part of his personality, but he believed deeply in recognizing and rewarding teaching.
It seemed a very natural outgrowth of the work that we had been undertaking to have a prize that would honor and celebrate individuals who were advancing these goals that were so central to the American Council of Trustees and Alumni.
When David McCullough received this award, he reminded everyone of a teacher few people have heard of, whose name was William Small. One of his students was a young man named Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson said of William Small, he fixed his destinies. Now, if we can find a way to honor some teachers that are building the future Thomas Jeffersons of our country, which I believe the people that ACTA recognizes are, boy, have we done some real good in the world.
In many respects, our award winners are fighting against the currents on our college campuses.
The trouble with the kind of political correctness that we find on so many campuses and in the intellectual culture today is not merely that it shuts down speech, though it does that. More fundamentally, the problem is that it shuts down thought.
Education derives in a very large way from the clash of different opinions and the open and free exchange of agreements and disagreements. That's what universities are about, more than anything else.
I am delighted that ACTA is in the forefront of organizing and exhorting alumni and trustees to fulfill their responsibilities, to be involved, to be in the forefront of protecting academic freedom.
Almost from the beginning, we have undertaken surveys of college graduates to see what they know about American history. Because I think quite rightly, most people assume that by the time you get to college, you know your history and your heritage. But what we discovered was, in fact, that was an erroneous assumption, that when we asked college graduates from elite and other institutions, who was the general at Yorktown, what established their separation of powers, they were unable in large numbers to answer these questions.
ACTA is necessary because they are unafraid to address powerful institutions about their failings. This scorecard that they issue, what they will learn, this takes guts to address all the major universities in the country and tell them that they're not actually teaching anything worthwhile. This is a powerful message, and I'm sure is unwelcome.
It is one of the critical elements of a good education, is the way in which students educate each other. But they can't do it if they don't know anything about what's in the other fellow's mind. What we mustn't have is everybody on his own escalator, knowing nothing about what the guy next to him knows.
It reminds me of the phrase that someone said, modern faith must pass through Nietzsche. Modern curricula must pass through ACTA. You have to engage with this argument. You can't simply ignore it. And to engage it will require a rethinking and a reappreciation of what is being taught to undergraduates.
Your forces are never too few to fight the good fight. And ACTA is a good example how a little guy can be very effective indeed.
To suggest that liberal arts education should be at the forefront of what a great university or any university wants to teach it seems passé, anachronistic, silly, oppressive, and therefore verboten. I don't believe any of that, and neither does ACTA. I don't know anyone else who's pushing the cause forward in the way that they are.
I don't think it is a sheer serendipity that when we look at the Founding Fathers, so many of them were founding college and university trustees. These were individuals who were creating a new country of freedom and liberty, but who also understood that education for freedom was essential to the maintenance of a free society.
James Madison once said that only a well-educated people can permanently be a free people, and he was right.
Looking back 10 years, I think my father would be proud of the recipients of this award.
I think for the ultimate success of the United States and for our ability as a nation, we don't have any choice but to get higher education right.
There's quite a profound sense in which the role of ACTA today is prophetic. It's calling academic institutions back to their original founding principles and to their best selves. And we need a prophetic voice out there in the front leading the resistance, and that voice is ACTA.